it's Kira and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be talking to you about some of my favourite things from May, which I honestly can't believe I'm saying, so it feels like I literally just sat down to film my April favourites, so I can't believe we're already in June and another month has completely passed. This year just seems to be going so quickly, but May was, for me, an absolutely fabulous month, and so I have lots of exciting things to tell you about, so let's just get straight into it. So last month I did mention I was going to frame these videos by having a list of the same 6 things I was going to tell you my favourite of each month. And so those things were my favourite book, my favourite TV show or film, my favourite YouTube channel, my favourite song, my favourite product and my favourite food item. And I'm still going to be talking about all of those things, but I've decided this month to add in an extra thing which I'm going to be talking about each month, and that is going to be my favourite podcast. I absolutely love podcasts. I think they are incredible, and when I'm travelling to and from work they are some of my favourite things to listen to because I just feel like they feel like a much more productive passing of time than just listening to the radio. However, since we've been in lockdown the past few months, I haven't actually been listening to podcasts as much as I usually would have, but I've started to get back into it and I'm fitting them into my daily routine now, and I absolutely love them, so I thought I would try and fit in a favourite podcast each month as well. So without further ado, I have quite a few things to talk about, so let's get straight into it with my favourite book, which for me, my favourite book that I read in May was The 2 Lives of Lydia Bird by Josie Silver. This is actually a relatively new release which only came out in 2020 at some point, so it was one that I really wanted to get to, and I was lucky enough to be gifted this one by my friend Meg for my birthday, which was on the 21st of May, so I only read this one relatively close to the end of the month, but I was so excited to read it because although it's a little bit out of my comfort zone being a romance book, it was one which sounded intriguing enough that I wanted to read it, and I'm so glad that I did because this to me was my ideal romance because it wasn't super fluffy or superficial. There was definitely a lot more depth to it and I absolutely loved it. So just to summarise this book, we essentially follow our protagonist Lydia Bird. At the beginning of the book, she's leading a relatively idealistic life. She has a long-term partner, Freddie, who she is engaged to. They're about to get married the following year. It's her birthday and just everything in her life is going exactly as she would have expected and hoped for. But as she's waiting to go out for her birthday meal, she gets the terrible news that Freddie has passed away in a car accident, and from then on we start to follow her as having 2 separate lives. The chapters in this book are titled either Asleep or Awake, and that's how we separate Lydia's 2 lives. In her awake life, she's essentially dealing with grief and trying to put her life back together and figure out how she can move on with her life now that Freddie is no longer there, and essentially just having to reassess all of her plans because all of the things that she'd planned for and assumed that she would do involved Freddie being there, and so she has to kind of reassess what she wants and sort of re-identify herself because she's been with him for so long that her identity has kind of merged with her status as Freddie's fiance, and so she has to figure out how to put all of these things together and get back on with her life whilst also dealing with the very real process of grief. And these chapters show grief in a very raw and vulnerable way. It shows that grief isn't necessarily a linear or quick process and shows how there can be lots of ups and downs and how such small things can really send you back because they remind you of what you're missing out on. And so that's what we have when we are awake. But then in the chapters that are titled Asleep, Lydia has started taking sleeping pills because due to her grief she's sort of dealing with insomnia, and so she takes these sleeping pills, and when she takes them she's transported into a world in which everything is moving along the path that she had previously imagined. In this world, Freddie is still alive and they're still going on with their wedding plans and everything is just moving forward, and so this to her is the life that she wishes that she had. And so she spends more and more time in this world asleep because she wants to spend all of her time in this world where Freddie is still alive. And then she essentially has to reassess this as well because she starts to realise that the more time that she's spending asleep, the less time she is spending in the real world and the more she's withdrawing from her real life and setting back her progress with dealing with her grief. And so she has this very difficult situation because all she wants is to have the life with Freddie be her reality, but she knows deep down that that's not her reality and that she has to come to terms with what's really happening. So it's a very emotional book. We see Lydia dealing with this terrible situation, but it's also a book which shows a lot of hope and a lot of growth, and we see her coming through the other side and having to sort of deal with this terrible situation but becoming a much stronger person by the end of the book. And I just think it showed grief in such a raw and realistic way, but also had a lot of hopeful and happy moments as well, and showed essentially that there was a light at the end of the tunnel. So this was a book which had a lot of depth, a lot of different layers, and a lot of character growth, which I just think was incredible. So I'd highly recommend this, especially if, like me, you're someone who usually doesn't like to read romance because you think it's a little bit too fluffy and superficial. This is a book which deals with those fluffy and fun moments, but mixes them in with some much darker topics as well, which I just think gives it a little bit more grit and depth and just made it a really, really fun read for me. Not sure if fun's the right word because it was actually quite a sad book, but a really enjoyable read at least. Next up, I'm going to be talking to you about my favourite YouTube channel from this month, and honestly, I am obsessed with this channel. I only found it a little way into May because it kept coming up as a suggested channel for me, and I'm so glad that I finally clicked on one of the videos because they are literally like a hug in a video format. They're so cozy and wholesome and lovely, and the channel that I'm talking about is Morgan Long. Morgan is a booktuber, but as well as that, she just makes a lot of very cozy, wholesome videos where she essentially just shows her life at home and all that she gets up to in and amongst reading books, drinking lots of tea because she is a fellow tea lover, which I definitely support, and just having a really, really lovely life. I don't know how else to describe it other than the word cozy, because that is really the vibe that you get from these videos. But I would also like to mention that she is a very, very talented videographer and editor. I believe that is what her actual full-time day job is, and that really, really comes across in her videos because they are such high quality pieces of content, and they really do feel like mini films rather than YouTube videos because they are just so high quality. Morgan also lives in the Pacific Northwest in Oregon, I believe, which is somewhere that I am desperate to travel to. It literally is on paper my ideal place, and I so want to go there. So watching these videos and seeing the cozy vibes of this area just makes me have such a desire to travel there, even more so than I already had. But just in general, I just love watching these videos because they do literally just feel like a hug in a video. You literally feel like you can just sit down, drink a cup of tea along with Morgan, and feel like you're just having a lovely cozy bookish conversation with a friend. So her content is incredible, and if you enjoy really chilled out, calming, cozy vibes from your videos, her channel is definitely for you because her videos just feel so wholesome and lovely. And I'm gonna say cozy again because that is just the perfect word for her channel. I will of course have her channel linked down below so you can go and check her out, which I would highly recommend doing because it is incredible. Next up, I'm going to be talking about my favourite TV show or film from this month, and this month it was a film which I absolutely loved. I did intend to watch this film when it first came out in cinemas in February, but then we went into lockdown and I just didn't have a chance to fit it in before all of the cinemas closed, so instead I had to just wait until it came out on Amazon. But luckily it actually came out just around my birthday, so I got to watch this film on my birthday in the evening, which was the perfect way to end my birthday. And the film I'm talking about is Emma by Jane Austen, or of course the film adaptation of Emma by Jane Austen. Emma is my favourite Austen novel that I've read so far. I do still have a couple of hers left to read, but I'm almost certain Emma will remain as my favourite because I just think it is such an incredible book. It's so funny, and as classics go, I do think it is a breath of fresh air because it's not a very serious book and not one which takes itself too seriously. It's not so weighed down by messages of morality, which I think a lot of classics can be. And don't get me wrong, I do love classics, but I just felt like Emma felt like something very fresh and new that I hadn't seen done in a classic before, and I absolutely loved it. And so I was so happy when I found that the film adaptation had brought it to life perfectly. Jane Austen is an author who I think likes to play on using a satirical tone of voice and not taking things too seriously, and also playing around certain tropes. And the trope that she really focuses on in Emma is the matchmaking trope, and the way that sort of a lot of classics really do focus on romance and courtship and people getting married. And Emma definitely plays on that in a very comedic way, and I think they brought it to life on screen so fabulously. Obviously in the dialogue we get a lot of humour, but I think even just in the way that characters sit in relation to one another and the various forms of eye contact that they make and all of the non-verbal forms of communication that we see on screen, we just get this humour conveyed in a visual format, and I just thought it was done so well. I laughed out loud so many times, which I think was just incredible because you don't necessarily expect that from like a period drama or film, and I just think it was such a funny one. The cast was absolutely absolutely perfect, and both Jay and I, because we watched it together on my birthday, agreed that the person they had to play Emma was of course incredible. Mr. Knightley was incredible, but we were both so impressed by the person they had playing Harriet, because they just made her into an even funnier character than any of us could have expected, which I just think was incredible. I also just think it's a very satisfying film to watch in terms of the aesthetics. It is so opulent and grand, and as period dramas go, I believe this is probably one of the most beautiful ones I've seen. I don't know what it was about it, but just the colours and styles that they used in how the characters were dressed and the settings that they were in, it just looked so beautiful. And so I think they did a great job of both conveying the era and also conveying the humour of the novel, and I honestly just think it was incredible. So would definitely recommend watching that one if you haven't seen it already, because it was just such a fun film. It's also not super long. I think it's only just over an hour and a half, so it's not a really long film. It doesn't feel super heavy or like weighed down by like period drama politics or anything like that. It just was light-hearted and fun and very funny. Next up, we have my favourite song from May. Now, if you watched my favourites video from last month, you'll know that my favourite TV show in April was the new TV adaptation of the book Normal People by Sally Rooney. And in that video, one of the things I said I liked so much about the show was the fact that it didn't use too much music. It left a lot of room for pauses, gaps, and you could really hear the white noise, which I think really added a sense of reality to the show. And I just think it was so nice that they didn't cover up every single moment of silence with music. And for me, that also made it seem as though the pieces of music that they did use had been so carefully chosen, and it really felt like they also added into the atmosphere, and they just felt perfectly selected for the atmosphere and mood of the show. And one of those songs which I absolutely loved was Hide and Seek by Imogen Heap. This is not a new song at all. It's been out for years and years, but until hearing it on Normal People, it had been such a long time since I'd heard it, and I'd never heard that particular bit of the song that they featured in Normal People. But since watching Normal People at the end of April, I then continued to listen to that song on repeat, and I just absolutely love it. I stand by the fact that it was absolutely perfect for the bit of Normal People that they put it in. It just seemed tailor-made for the show, and honestly, if I didn't know that it was a song that had been out for years, I would genuinely think it had been commissioned for the show, because it just seemed absolutely ideal. But besides the point, I've continued to listen to this song all throughout May, and I'm still absolutely obsessed with it. I of course can't play it here in this video, sadly, but I will have a link to it in the description down below so you can go and check it out, because it is such a good song, and one which has so many different layers. There are so many different vibes and styles in the song that you get to experience so many different bits of music. I just think it's a really cool song, and I really like it. So that's one I've been listening to all throughout May. Next up, we have my favourite product from May, and I know the term product could mean absolutely anything because it is such a broad term, but this month I have a skincare product that I've really been loving using, and that is this Super Boost face oil from the brand Myru. It's made with 100% cold pressed blackberry seed oil, which is an ingredient I don't think I've ever come across before, but I've really been enjoying it. It's one which is meant to target brightening the complexion and just evening out skin tone, which is something that I really wanted, because I'm quite a pale person, and I do often find that unless I've been out in the sun a lot and I've got a little bit of a tan, which doesn't happen very often, I feel like my under eye circles can often look really dark compared to the rest of my skin, which is quite pale, and I just feel like sometimes it stands out a little bit, so I always want something which kind of brightens the skin a little bit, and this one has been doing such a great job, and I've really been enjoying it. It's essentially just like a little dropper, and you just pop a few drops onto your fingers and just like sort of rub it into the skin, and I kind of just use it on an evening after I've cleansed my face and like had a shower and all of that stuff, but it's one which I really enjoy. I've seen it a few times coming up on social media, and that was what kind of introduced me to the brand, and so I actually decided to ask someone to get me this for my birthday because I just really wanted to try them out, and I'm so glad that I did, because I'll definitely be buying more products from them in the future. I'll definitely repurchase this one, but I'll also be trying out some of their other things as well, and there are a few other things about this brand which I really enjoy. Of course, as you may or may not know, I am vegan, and so buying products which are vegan and cruelty free is something which is of course high on my priority list, and this is something which ticks that off. It's marked cruelty free and it's also completely vegan ingredients. Obviously it's literally 100% blackberry oil, so there's nothing else in there, which is really great because I feel like a lot of times when it comes to beauty products and skincare, there are so many ingredients and half the time you can't even pronounce them, never mind actually know what they are. So being able to know that this is literally just blackberry seed oil is really great because you know exactly what you're putting on your face. And it's also a brand which is actually started because of the owner's experiences with allergies, I believe, and she started this brand in order to create high quality skincare which was suitable for people with allergies. And so they have a variety of different ranges in terms of they have some which have absolutely no fragrance whatsoever and others which do, but they're all hypoallergenic and are just really, really great for if you have sensitive skin, which again I do. I don't have any major allergies or anything like that, but I do tend to notice that I have slightly sensitive skin. And so again, using something which is completely natural ingredients where you know exactly what you're putting on your face and it's just really, really simple, clean and good ingredients is just great, and it's been doing a really lovely job. I really like the product. I love just the packaging in general because it's so like clean and simple, but it just looks really, really nice. And again, most importantly of all, in my opinion, it is vegan and cruelty free, which is the highest priority for me when it comes to buying skincare products. But of course you want to make sure that you're buying something that is both vegan, cruelty free and also high quality, because there's no point wasting money on products that don't do their job, and this one definitely is doing a really, really lovely job and I just absolutely love it. So I definitely recommend checking these out if you are. I don't know if they ship outside of the UK, I'm not entirely sure. I'll have a look and let you know in the description down below. But if you are in the UK, I definitely recommend them because they are a really, really lovely brand and I love the products. Next up, we have my favourite podcast from this month. And this is obviously a new instalment to this month's monthly favourites video, but it's one that I'm super excited to keep talking about every single month because I just love podcasts so much. But this month's podcast is actually a relatively new one. It only launched at the end of April and there are currently 5 episodes out, but new ones are being released every single week, and it is a podcast called The Yoga Habit. The Yoga Habit is a podcast which is actually hosted and run by one of my incredible friends, Ella, who I know through Instagram. On Instagram, she is called Namastella, and I will have her linked down below so you can go and check her out. But she is an incredible yoga teacher and just an all-round positive and lovely and just incredibly kind person. So I would definitely recommend going and checking her out. And all of those incredible traits that I just mentioned really come across in the podcast, which just makes it such a lovely listening experience. As the title would suggest, The Yoga Habit is a podcast which is all about the various steps that you can take to make yoga a habit in your life and all of the ways in which you can make it work for you. She really conveys that yoga doesn't have to be the same for every single person and how you can really make it work for you and your life. And she also explores yoga in all of the varying ways that you can apply it. You often think about yoga in terms of the physical practice, but Ella also explores the other manifestations of yoga in terms of mindfulness and meditation, amongst other things as well. So she really explores yoga in its entirety and explores how you can make it work for you. It's super accessible, so I would really recommend it if you are someone who is new to yoga or has been wanting to get into yoga, because she really does explore it in a way which makes it accessible for everyone. And like I said, she is just such a lovely and kind and positive person, so listening to her podcast is just such a lovely and uplifting experience. I actually also did an interview with Ella for the podcast, which hasn't been released yet, but I'm excited to hear myself in podcast format for the first time because it's something I've never done before and was very, very excited to do. But I would definitely recommend checking out The Yoga Habit. I listened to it on Apple Podcasts, but I'm not sure if it's available in other places as well. Again, I'll have that information linked down below. You've got to save the best till last, so I'm going to be finishing off this monthly favourites video talking about my favourite food item from the month. But honestly, it was so hard to narrow down this month. It's always hard for me to narrow it down because I just love food so much and there are always so many great options. But this month in particular, it was very, very difficult because, as I've already mentioned, it was my birthday earlier in May, which meant that I ate so many incredible birthday treats, and it was just so hard to narrow it down to one favourite. I actually did film a full what I eat in a week on my birthday week, so you can go and check that video out if you want to see all of the other incredible things I ate. But the thing that I finally selected as my favourite food item from the month was this bag of vegan pick and mix sweets from the Conscious Candy Company. One of my presents from Jay was this Conscious Candy Company pick and mix box, and they are a company which essentially just has all vegan sweets. It's a full website dedicated just to vegan sweets, which is incredible because it is really difficult to find sweets which you know for certain are vegan, because there are a lot of sweets which are gelatin free, but then you just don't know if there are any other ingredients in there, and it can just be a bit tricky because sweets often have a lot of ingredients which, kind of like skincare, you don't even know how to pronounce, never mind knowing what they are, so it can be a bit tricky to know whether or not they're vegan. Whereas with this, you knew for sure that you were getting a full bag of vegan sweets, and they are just so good. So I got this giant bag which was full to the brim. It's now almost empty because I've been eating it non-stop for the past few weeks since my birthday. He also got me some vegan marshmallows which came here, and another chocolatey thing as well. So I got loads of sweets, but this pick and mix box in particular was incredible. I don't know if you'll be able to see inside because it's almost empty, but essentially there were just sweets galore. Some of my favourites were these little dummy things, and also, what else did we have? Ooh, a watermelon slice, rainbow twizzles, fried eggs, cola bottles. It was literally like the bag had been made for me specifically because I love sour sweets with loads of sour sugar on. And there were so many of these in this bag, so it was absolutely perfect. And honestly, this was a great birthday treat, but I'll definitely be ordering one of these again, especially for special occasions, because it was just so perfect and amazing to not have to worry about things being vegan or not, because you just knew it was, and they all tasted so good, and there's such a good range of sweets in here. So I definitely recommend checking out the Conscious Candy Company because they've got such a great range, and it was just such good quality. And actually this entire bag, plus the marshmallows and the chocolate and also postage, only came to £16, which for the amount of sweets you got was a really good deal in my opinion. So I definitely recommend this, and it's probably not only my favourite food thing from the month, but probably one of my favourite presents as well, because it was just so good. So there we have it. That is all of my favourite things from May. As you can tell, I had an incredible month and just had so many amazing things that I got to enjoy. So it was a really great month, and of course it was my birthday month, which made it even better. Let me know in the comments down below if you've tried any of the things of which I mentioned in this video, and I definitely would recommend checking them out if you haven't already, because all the things I've mentioned, from food to skincare products to books and of course YouTube channels, they're all just so incredible and I love them so much, so I definitely recommend checking them out. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.